The fifth commandment is, "Thou shalt not kill." But as we have seen, the prohibition against killing is much broader than simply taking the life of another, shedding another person's blood. The Catechism speaks under the topic of the fifth commandment about safeguarding the rights of other people, making sure that the rights of human beings are protected and defended. Scandal is an attitude or behavior which leads another to do evil. A scandalous action tempts another and could lead another into sin. Scandal is grave when by omission or commission one is deliberately led to sin. Scandal is especially grave when given by persons of authority or by teachers, or when those scandalized are particularly weak. Scandal can be provoked by laws or institutions, by fashion or opinion. Examples include laws or social structures that lead to a decline in morals, social conditions that make Christian conduct difficult or impossible, business leaders who encourage fraud, teachers who provoke their children to anger, and manipulators of public opinion who turn it away from moral values. A person who is guilty of scandal is responsible for the evil that he has directly or indirectly encouraged. Temptations to sin are sure to come, but woe to him by whom they come. The fifth commandment speaks as well about respect for health, about taking care of one's person, about not engaging in behaviors or habits that will ultimately cause one's demise or weaken considerably one's bodily health. In addition to our life, health is a gift entrusted to our stewardship. We must take care of our life and health, taking into account the needs of others and our common good. Nevertheless, health is a relative value, not an absolute one. The cult of the body that idolizes physical perfection and athletic prowess is a neo-pagan notion to be rejected, as it leads to a perversion of human relationships, preferring the strong to the weak. The virtue of temperance is a very important virtue in regard to the fifth commandment, because the virtue of temperance protects the human body from those things that can and will cause it harm. The virtue of temperance disposes us to avoid every kind of excess, the abuse of food, alcohol, tobacco, or medicine. Those incur grave guilt who by drunkenness or a love of speed endanger their own and others' safety on the road, at sea, or in the air. And drugs, except when they are used for a therapeutic purpose and used in the manner in which the prescribing physician intends them, are always considered a threat to human life and a threat to the dignity of the human person. The illegal drug trade is scandalous and constitutes a cooperation in evil. Concern for the health of its citizens requires that society help in the attainment of living conditions that allow them to grow and reach maturity, food and clothing, housing, health care, basic education, employment, and social assistance. Also, in speaking about the fifth commandment, the Catechism speaks about the respect for the dignity of the human person and scientific research. Scientific research on human persons can lead to advancements in medicine and public health. It is an expression of man's God-given dominion over creation and is at the service of humanity. However, science and technology alone cannot disclose the meaning of existence and of human progress. Science and technology are ordered to man, from whom they take their origin and development. Hence, they find in the person and in his moral values both evidence of their purpose and awareness of their limits. It is impossible to claim moral neutrality for scientific research and medical care. Science and technology, by their very nature, require unconditional respect for fundamental moral criteria. They must be at the service of the human person, of his inalienable rights, of his true and integral good, in conformity with the plan and the will of God. So research on the human person, the human being, cannot cause grave and lasting damage to that person. The Catechism admits that using human subjects for research can be very beneficial, but it must never be done at the expense of their dignity, at the expense of their health, at the expense of their bodily integrity. Research must never place into undue jeopardy the subject's life or physical or psychological integrity. Research on human beings without consent offends against human dignity. The Catechism also speaks of organ transplants. Organ transplants are acceptable when the risks to the donor are proportionate to the benefit sought by the recipient. Donation after death is a noble and meritorious act and is to be encouraged as an expression of generous solidarity. An organ transplant would not be morally acceptable if done without informed consent or if done so as to directly bring about the death or disability of the donor. The fifth commandment also speaks about bodily integrity. The fifth commandment forbids kidnapping and the taking of hostages, terrorism, torture, even to extract a confession from a criminal, amputations and mutilations, except when performed for strictly therapeutic purposes, sterilization performed on innocent persons, cruel practices of the past done by the state, often without protest from the pastors of the church, are regrettable. In fact, the church always taught the duty of clemency and mercy and forbade clerics to shed blood. In recent times, it has become evident that these cruel practices were neither necessary for public order nor in conformity with the legitimate rights of the human person. On the contrary, these practices led to ones even more degrading. It is necessary to work for their abolition. We must pray for the victims and their tormentors. And finally, the Church speaks about respect for the dead under the category of the fifth commandment. The dying should always receive palliative and spiritual care. The bodies of the dead must be treated with respect as a sign of our hope in the resurrection. Autopsies may be morally permissible for legal inquests or scientific research. Organ donation after death is morally permissible and meritorious. Cremation is permitted, provided that it does not demonstrate a denial of faith in the resurrection of the body. Ashes are to be buried in sacred ground or placed in a columbarium in a cemetery. They are not to be scattered.